Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for Saturday's edition here on KAKM of Alaska Weather. Up first, there's a flood advisory out for through Sunday for the Sag River between Pump Station number 3 and Dead Horse. Rising waters are expected on the flooded portion of the Dalton Highway overnight tonight. Again, that flood advisory along that portion of the river is out through Sunday. And moving on to the satellite imagery here of the Western Pacific, we've got the Aleutians right through here with Shemya and then Petropavlovsk on the Kamchatka Peninsula. This is the next system down here that'll be moving up and bringing some small craft advisory level winds into the far western Aleutians there around Shemya tomorrow afternoon. And then that'll bring gales in to the area tomorrow night and on Monday into the western Aleutians with increasing winds over the west central areas during the day on Monday. On the goes west imagery, a lot of sunshine here over southern Alaska, mostly sunny skies there from the Copper River Basin. A few wisps of clouds dropping southeastward, but a lot of sunshine here, especially back to the west, almost right out to the coastline. And then this band of moisture here from the Alaska Peninsula, old frontal boundary there, bringing rain areas of here from the Alaska Peninsula up along the southwest coast, Nunivak Island, up towards St. Lawrence Island. Also a little bit of rain catching the western Seward Peninsula. Back to the west of that feature, just a lot of clouds and moisture. Right there is the position of another system, pretty weak, but brought some areas of rain to the central Aleutian areas. And this afternoon is mostly confined from about Atka over to roughly Nikolsky, possibly, with some light rain and clouds breaking out back toward Adak. And then this low pressure area, 1005 millibar feature there north of Shemya, bringing some showers in. Another band just poised to move into the area for this evening. Otherwise, here's that weakening frontal boundary, bringing some rain today. Tuksuk Bay, Cold Bay, and King Cove all picked up about 1/10 of an inch of rain in the 12-hour period from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. this afternoon, and then some lighter amounts back to the northwest. Otherwise, some scattered shower activity here on the eastern Arctic coast, across the north slope and into the northeast Brooks Range areas, and then possible showers here breaking out over the upper Tanana River, upper Tanana Valley and 40 Mile Country, possibly over the Wrangell Mountains, but all the thunderstorm activity occurring here over northwest Canada, and just very isolated, these showers through here, a little more scattered nature up over the northeast part of the state. There was some patchy fog along the eastern Arctic coastal areas. Otherwise, a lot of low clouds here along the coast of the Panhandle this morning, burned back this afternoon. IFR conditions along the outer coastal line this morning, again improving to VFR this afternoon. Otherwise, a lot of sunshine here across the southeast coast, allowing temperatures to rise into the 60s to mid-70s in some locations. Very warm conditions over portions of south central Alaska, both Talkeetna, Seward up to 78 degrees today. And in the case of Seward, that was a record high. That beat the old record of 74 set in 1993. Forecast for tonight, pretty cloud-free here over southern Alaska as well as up into the interior. Still have a risk of some shower activity here over the eastern Brooks Range, North Slope areas, and probably some snow showers along the eastern Arctic coast with some patchy fog back to the west. But look for these winds to begin to increase here on the western Arctic coast and across the western North Slope areas as well. Picking up from the east and northeast, 20 to 30 miles per hour, a few higher gusts, and then lighter winds down across Kotzebue Sound. Pretty light wind conditions across much of the interior down to the North Gulf Coast. Light winds, no change here for the southeast coast. That low cloud deck pushing back up against the coastline. Possible IFR again on the outer coastline there, but should stay mostly fair over the inside waters. And then there's still this weakening trough here has enough moisture to keep a chance of rain here along the central Alaska Peninsula from about, say, Sandpoint over to maybe as far east as Chignik, up across Port Hayden, Nelson Lagoon. A few showers northwestward there across Nunivak Island to St. Lawrence Island, but pretty fair conditions here over the southwest interior Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, mostly fair over Bristol Bay. Still a risk of some showers here for the central Aleutians and partly as far east as Nikolsky, but most of this moisture now sliding off to the south and southeast. Nothing out here to the west. Showers end over the western Aleutians. And looking at the forecast for tomorrow, again, day much like today here for the Panhandle, temperatures back into the 60s to mid-70s. Low clouds burning back off the coastline during the afternoon hours there for the outer coast, and then some variable clouds up along the North Gulf Coast, but clear in Prince William Sound. Thermal low bringing temperatures back into the 70s here over the Kenai Peninsula. Copper River Basin, Susitna, Matanuska Valleys look for highs back into the mid-70s. Chance of some isolated showers or even thunderstorms over the Talkeetna Mountains, and again, still have some showers up here over the northeast interior areas, possibly as far south as the White Mountains, but more than likely from about the Eagle area, risk of an isolated thunderstorm northward there, all the way to the eastern North Slope, and still looking at that low clouds and patchy fog, especially in the morning hours there along the eastern Arctic coast, but winds picking up now 15 to 30 miles an hour out of the east and east-northeast, and there are gale warnings here from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort for tomorrow. And so pretty windy here in the western Arctic coastal areas up to about Wainwright, and then it gets more lighter there from the central coast onto the east, and then some showers breaking out tomorrow afternoon, northeast Bristol Bay, back west-northwest there to the Kilbrook Mountains, and then some scattered isolated showers possible over the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta areas. Otherwise, another sunny, warm day here, especially over the northwest interior. Looks like good VFR, sunshine right out to the coastline, much of the Seward Peninsula. Sunny tomorrow, and then Kuskokwim Valley looking good, just as showers down here over the southwest. Still a risk of some showers, leftover moisture, but not much left there for the central Alaska Peninsula, and some isolated scattered showers possible over the eastern and central Aleutians. And then here's that next system pushing in from the west there that'll bring those winds here for Chimay-Attu up to 30 knots tomorrow afternoon from the southeast. And again, that'll turn into gales tomorrow night and on Thursday. You can see the front right across the area there. So the winds increase here toward the central Aleutians, but not even reaching small craft advisories there for the Adak-Yatka areas. Isolated showers again in the afternoon for the Unalaska, Cold Bay, False Pass areas, and the Pribilof Islands, risk of a shower, mostly cloudy skies, and a little bit better chance of clouds and some scattered showers here across southern Alaska and the Copper River Basin, across south central Alaska with this low center, 1005 millibar right over the Squintna area or Susitna Valley with risk of afternoon showers, mainly over the mountains here. So the Talkeetnas, Chugach Mountains back to the Alaska Range, and then scattered showers back to the southwest coast. To the north, sunny temperatures, highs in the 60s and 70s once again. Winds stay pretty brisk here along the western Arctic coastal area, especially from that Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort area, but seem to be a little less gradient here on the west side there, and then still that onshore flow keeping some chilly air and a risk of some rain or snow showers along the eastern Arctic coast and the extreme northeast, but all the thunderstorm activity and showers, most of it, the bulk of it anyway, will be off into the Yukon and British Columbia. So another mostly sunny day in store for the southeast coast there with that light west-northwest breeze condition continuing. So temperatures back into the 60s to lower 70s once again there. Mostly sunny skies in store for Kodiak Island as well, and Bristol Bay looking really good. For the temperatures today down there, they ranged from about 60 degrees at Squintna to 70 degrees at Petersburg. State capital came in with 76 today. That same temperature at 4 p.m. recorded at Seward, but they were up to 78 earlier. 78 also reached at Talkeetna, 71 at Palmer, 74, 75 over in the Copper River Basin there at Gulkana with 69 at Northway, 67 at Delta, with Fairbanks pushing up to about 71 this afternoon. Warmer conditions over at Tanana with 74, then cooling down a little bit there at Bettles with 66 degrees, 55 at Fort Yukon, and a 50-degree reading there at Anatuvik, 39 over at Dead Horse, 37 at Barrow, but the remainder of the Arctic coast in the mid-40s. It's a 52-degree reading over at Kotzebue, 63 at Selawik, and 56 at Buckland, 61 today at Nome. They picked up about 1/100 of an inch of rain in the last 12 hours. They're just catching most of that moisture now pushed back to the west, and the whole front continues to weaken. But 76 in McGrath today, 73 at Sleepmute, up to 67 in Bethel. It'll be a little warmer tomorrow, at least that's what's forecast. Mid-40s, mid to upper 40s here for the Pribilofs, upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, 62 at Pilot Point, and 70 today in King Salmon. A little cooler, mid-40s out to the west. Kodiak came in with 60 today. Lows for tonight, mid to upper 20s for the Arctic coast and eastern North Slope areas, otherwise in the 30s through the Brooks Range. South of the mountains there, 40s, back out to the west to upper 40s to lower to mid-50s here over the southwest interior. Lows tonight, upper 40s to lower 50s, south central Alaska, in the 40s to lower 50s even over the Copper River Basin down into Prince William Sound, mostly in the 40s to lower 50s for the southeast coast, and in the 40s here for the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s to lower 40s for the Bering Sea. Highs for tomorrow, a little chilly up here along the Arctic coast, but not that bad in the lower 30s there, with 40s through the Brooks Range, south of the mountains, 72 there, the forecast at Tanana again, mid-70s, 76 for McGrath tomorrow with 74 degrees forecast for Bethel, otherwise 40s along the coast, 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, but warmer to the northeast, and then back into the 60s to upper 70s here over the south central Alaska and the Copper River Basin areas. Warmest again in the Susitna Valley, the central Kenai Peninsula areas in the Copper River Basin, with highs mostly in the 60s to possibly lower 70s for the southeast coast. Flying weather again, IFR to start the day along portions of the outer coastline here. Otherwise, marginal VFR parked along and just off the coast throughout much of the day there for the southeast coast, and then areas of marginal IFR conditions there for the Arctic coast on the east side, better conditions with offshore flow on the west side. VFR for the Seward Peninsula, marginal VFR occasionally at times here along the southwest coast. Back to the west with some IFR persisting along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula here, but VFR, eastern Aleutians, possibly up to the Pribilofs, and then some more marginal VFR with IFR out over the central Aleutians and through the Bering Sea. And passes look pretty good. Anatuvik and Adigan both open, VFR flying through both the south and north entrances. Western Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, rainy VFR, windy, wide open. Isabel, VFR, Mentasta, VFR as well. Tanita remains open, as does Portage. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, upper high right over south central Alaska. That's where the freezing levels are the highest at about 10,000 feet continuing. But cooler air, kind of an intrusion of colder air up there over the northeast part of the state and the Arctic coast down to 2,000 feet there, and then 4,000 to 6,000 feet over the eastern Bering Sea, and kind of a cold pool 2,000 to 4,000 feet through here, and then milder back out to the west. Icing threats, nothing too significant. Maybe a little bit of leftover stuff here over the eastern Aleutians. This area poised to move into the western Aleutians and the Bering Sea Sunday night, and then into Monday, sliding east along the Aleutians. Just some scattered areas of light to isolated moderate rime icing possible here over the southwest interior and up over the northeast. Upper level wind flow chart shows a high pressure ridge from the Gulf of Alaska right up into the Arctic there. This little kink in the flow here, that's the upper disturbance that's bringing the colder air into the northeast, and the risk is of showers. Otherwise, southeast flow off the coast here. Upper low kind of stays parked there over the eastern Aleutians. 9,000 feet, easterlies up to 35 knots on the western Arctic coast. Light variable conditions here across southern Alaska. Light winds along the southeast coast as well. Easterlies 15 to 20 knots there. Eastern Aleutians up toward the Pribilofs, and then those southerlies on the increase, both at 9,000 and 3,000 feet. 25 to 30 knots out over the far western Aleutians. I'll gradually be moving eastward tomorrow night and into Monday. Otherwise, light north to northwest flow here, 5 to 15 knots over southern Alaska. Northeasterlies up to 35 knots on the western Arctic coast. And with that will be some occasional moderate chop from south of Point Lay all the way down to Point Hope. Otherwise, occasional light to isolated moderate here across the Brooks Range, possibly along and east to Kodiak Island. Turbulence on the increase over the far western Aleutians. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
In January of 1996, one of the most devastating winter storms in history slams the East Coast. 2 feet of snow dumps on New York and throughout the Northeast Corridor. Schools, airports, and roads are shut down. By the time it's over, the blizzard and resultant flooding caused $3 billion in losses, and 187 lives are taken. And in the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York, the snowmelt triggers another potentially devastating crisis. Stormwater runoff, contaminated with trash, dirt, fertilizers, and pesticides from nearby farms and communities, threatens the fresh water supply. And the Catskill system of reservoirs is vitally important, for it is the biggest watershed of New York City, providing drinking water to over 9 million people.
The miracle of the city's water supply system is largely unknown to most New Yorkers. You ask people, where does the water come from? Often people shrug their shoulders and say New Jersey.
I figured that we were probably our own separate water system than from upstate. I'd rather be drinking water from upstate than the Hudson River.
I don't know that most people are aware of how large the problem is and how close to crisis many of our water supply systems are.
To preserve the purity of the reservoirs and enforce the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Environmental Protection Agency presented the Big Apple with 2 options. Either build and maintain a $6 billion facility to filter all of the city's tap water, or fund a $1 billion program to protect the watershed from polluted runoff.
When it comes to our investment in clean air and clean water, preserving open space, fixing antiquated sewage treatment plants, we can't wait. It doesn't get any less expensive, it gets more expensive.
With the historic Watershed Agreement of 1997, an unprecedented upstate-downstate partnership was forged to protect the New York City water supply.
The Watershed Agreement is saving New York City billions of dollars.
The plan includes purchasing and preserving 355,000 acres of undeveloped watershed land, the upgrading of sewage treatment plants, and the protection and restoration of stream corridors.
What we're looking at here is a main tributary of the Esopus Creek. During flooding, we were seeing a lot of sediment coming out of the stream. The clay gets into the water column and it becomes very turbid, and then it makes it very difficult to treat and clean that water. So from a water quality perspective, we're very concerned about erosion.
The program also provides funding for farmers that implement agriculture management practices.
Well, we have a very exciting program with the Watershed Agricultural Council where we are working with local farmers. We look at how they're handling the animals so that the runoff associated with manure, fertilizer, and that farm activity isn't getting into the streams around our reservoirs.
This water here is basically the water you're going to be drinking down in the city. And I feel I've got a responsibility to try my best to keep it clean for when it gets down there. It used to be when it rained here on the farm, the water that ran away from the back of the barn here was full of mud, manure, and it would just run brown and right into the stream. 2 years ago, we would spread every day. We'd have to take it out, spread it on the fields. If the snow was deep, we spread it on the snow, and unfortunately, if the ground was froze when the snow melted, the nutrient value of it for fertilizer was gone. It wound up down in the reservoir.
With New York City funding, a secure above-ground steel tank that can hold 400,000 gallons of manure was installed on the Meadowbrook farm.
That's enough storage for 6 months of the year. Now we can store it, spread it when it'll do the most good to us for fertilizer, and we don't have to spread it every day.
I worked with Tim on the plan to develop the improvements we're going to make. Plan really belongs to the farmer. And it's a collaboration of their ideas and what technical advice we can bring to the program. But the farmer makes the decision.
It's a program that seems to make everybody happy.
Here's to the farmers who are working so hard to make sure we've got clean water to put in our coffee.
To guarantee the city's water supply is fresh at the tap, comprehensive tests are performed by the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, both in the lab and at over 1,000 sampling stations throughout the city.
New York City has probably one of the most extensive water quality monitoring programs in the nation, if not the world.
We're sampling every day, 365 days a year. I've been drinking this water for 53 years. Nothing else. Best water in the world. New York City, straight from the tap to my lips.
Coming up, the future of our water supply remains at risk, but there's something everyone can do to help protect it. Find out how next. To keep our watersheds free of pollutants will require the actions of every citizen, community, and business.
Paved concrete surfaces, asphalt, parking lots, sidewalks. The question is, do we need to have as many as we do? Because to the extent that you have too much impervious surface, the water is not retained on site. It doesn't soak into the ground. It runs off, picks up speed, carries pollutants and contaminants into the water body.
One strategy for preventing stormwater runoff is occurring at the new Ford Rouge Center in Dearborn, Michigan. This remodeled truck plant is covered by a green roof the size of 8 football fields. Planted with a porous ground cover, it reduces the amount of polluted runoff released into the watershed.
The thing that tends to get the most attention is the 10-acre green roof, but that's really just part of a philosophy that if an area does not have to be paved or built upon, it's going to be green space.
And communities are also implementing green space strategies, such as rain gardens.
They sloped the lot in such a manner that all the flow goes towards this landscaping, where basically the polluted runoff can percolate into the ground and get filtered rather than going straight onto the street, into the storm drain system, and really a very simple approach to cleaning up our runoff in urban areas.
But perhaps the most powerful course of action is individual participation.
People need to take responsibility for the state of our waters, and water conservation is one area where they can do that as a committed citizen. All those things your mom told you, take a short shower, don't let the water tap run while you're brushing your teeth.
Taking your household hazardous waste to a cleanup and recycling day. Don't wash your car on the streets and put all those suds down into the drain.
When you change or use motor oil, you don't dump it into the street. Everybody's got to clean up after their pets. Obviously, that's a big concern. Fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, and make sure you don't use them anytime there's any chance of rain coming up in the near future. When you're irrigating your lawn and your garden, make sure that you're not overspraying and causing all those chemicals to end up getting into the storm drain system. The only way we're going to solve the problem is if everybody does their part.
We all live in a watershed. We all have an impact on our environment. And we must all play a role in the protection and restoration of our valuable water resources. To learn more about how you can get involved and to get a free brochure called After the Storm, visit epa.gov/Weather Channel.
Welcome back. Well, west winds at 15 knots for the north coast, northwest 15 for the central and south coast, with seas running 4 to 6 feet out there. Northwest 15, 3-foot seas for Clarence Strait, and kind of light and variable conditions for the central and northern inside waters. And then for Monday, Lynn Canal, northern Lynn Canal, south 15 knots, 3-foot seas, south at about 10 knots for Stevens Passage. No change here for Clarence Strait, and westerlies up to about 20 knots here on the central and south coast, becoming more west and southwest, and lighter winds up to the north. For Prince William Sound, light southwest breeze tomorrow at about 10. Light westerly winds for Cook Inlet, west up to 15 for Kamishak Bay. Southwest winds 20 knots here, Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait. Westerlies at about 20 here for the western North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands. And then on Monday, those become southwest, southwest 20 here along the east side of Kodiak Island, right up across the Barren Islands into the western Gulf Coast, and then those diminish to about 10 knots for the central coast. No change for Prince William Sound, no change for Cook Inlet, no change for Kamishak Bay or Shelikof Strait. And looking at Bristol Bay tomorrow, west at 10, light variable winds for the Alaska Peninsula here, both Sunday and for Monday, southwest breeze for Bristol Bay and the water southwest of Kodiak Island. Out in the Aleutians, east-northeast 10 to 15 or 5 to 15 knots for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow. Then those winds increasing southeast up to 30 knots in the afternoon, up to 20 knots here west of Adak. Otherwise for the central Aleutians northerlies at 10 to 15. And then taking a look at Monday, got gale warnings out here for the western Aleutians and west of Adak, or actually about Adak to the west, small craft advisories, easterlies 10 to 15 knots for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, northerlies at 10 to 15, 15-knot northerlies for St. Lawrence Island, and light northeast breeze for the Pribilofs. And taking a look at the outlook for Monday here, northwest winds at about 15 for the Pribilof Islands, and westerlies south of Nunivak Island only at 10 knots, north of Nunivak Island northwest at about 15, north 15 for the northern Bering Sea, and then northeast 25 knots, small craft advisories in the forecast for Monday there for St. Lawrence Island, with those seas up to about 5 feet. And going up to the Arctic coast there on the east side, northerlies 10 to 15 knots here from the eastern Arctic coast or Beaufort Sea coastline over to demarcation point. The central coast, northeast 15, then they start picking up here, especially southwest of Wainwright. Northeasterlies at 30 knots, northeast 35 knots. Gale warnings out from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, and from Wales to Cape Thompson, just northeast at 20. And taking a look at the outlook for Monday, north to northwest winds 15 knots on the eastern stretch of the coastline. Central coast, northerlies at 15. And then still pretty brisk winds, brisk wind and small craft advisories here for the western Arctic coast right down to Cape Thompson. Actually, a small craft advisory there from Wales to Cape Thompson for those easterlies at about 25 knots. And for tonight, again, a little bit of moisture left over from St. Lawrence Island across Nunivak Island to the central Alaska Peninsula with the remnants of that frontal boundary. Risk of a few showers in Nikolsky over to Atka. Otherwise, the Aleutians looking pretty good, and risk of some showers up here over the northeast. Otherwise, a lot of clear skies, but the winds on the increase here for the western Arctic coast and eastern or western north slope areas, but light variable winds, mostly clear skies here over southern Alaska. Look for the clouds to increase in fog right along the outer coastline of the Panhandle. Otherwise, it remains fair. And no change for tomorrow, no change here over the interior. Risk of some isolated thunderstorms there for around the Eagle area. Scattered showers to the north along the eastern border of the northeast Brooks Range and also over the southwest. And then for Monday, sunny over the interior, more clouds, cooler conditions here for southern Alaska. The chance of showers from the Copper River Basin out to the south.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.